Hey everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. I'm your newly shorn host, Matt Connarton. Yeah, I decided, summer's here and it's the hot weather. I should probably get a haircut, try to be a little cooler. And then I realized it's actually already September and I just can't do anything right. But in any case, so welcome to the show. It is September 2nd, 2015 here on the television edition of Unleashed. And I may have a guest. We will see. I'm skeptical that he's going to be able to get here on time, in time before the end of the show. But because he had a 2 p.m. appointment, and of course we're live every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So, he said he's around the corner and he'll try to make it, so we'll see. I hope he makes it. He is someone who's been on the show many times. He's a friend of the show, if you will, more than a guest. We put him in a special category, friend of the show. And he is a controversial figure. And he is about to launch a brand new controversial program that will be running on IPM Nation in the very near future. So if he can make it, he's going to stop in today and we'll discuss that. So I'm not going to tell you who it is because if it doesn't work out and he doesn't make it here before the end of the show, then it's kind of a letdown type thing. See, now there's the hook. Now you have to stick around to see who it is I'm talking about. Unless, I just made all that up and I just said that to get you to stick around, but I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. So, but we do have plenty of interesting things to talk about. So, of course, Unleashed now, I know I say it every week, but 5 nights a week on the IPM Nation live station. And, of course, every Tuesday and Thursday night, we're also carried on Ohm Times Radio at ohmtimes.com/IOM. A lot of expansion with Ohm Times. They're adding a second channel to their network. And we're doing a lot of expansion at IPM Nation as well. And we are going to be adding a second channel. So we're going to have 2 live stations, essentially, on IPMNation.com. There's tons of new programming coming to the network. My head is spinning from it. Not that I'm complaining. It's a wonderful problem to have. But we have a lot of new live programming that is coming on, so very cool. We had a big show Saturday night called Awakening Liberty, making its debut at on IPM Nation, and there's going to be plenty more of that to come. But let's talk about, well, of course, I love talking about presidential politics. There's actually a lot that I want to try to get to today, especially if our nameless guest does make it in. That will be cut short because we have plenty to discuss with him. But we'll try to get through as much of this as we can. There are 2 people who are running for president who I don't think anyone took seriously in the beginning. On both sides of the aisle. One of them, of course, being Donald Trump, who from the beginning I said, take lightly at your peril. I remember when he first announced, or when he was even toying with announcing and then ultimately did announce, people took him so lightly within the media that there were national polls where his name was not even included in the national poll of prospective candidates for the Republican nomination. And I said from the beginning, I think he's got a real chance. I don't think he can win the presidency, but I think he has a chance of winning the nomination. By the way, I actually think he could win the presidency. I've changed my thoughts on that. And then on the left, you have Bernie Sanders. And there's a new national poll out showing him in the lead nationally for the Democratic nomination. So the 2 people who in the beginning no one really thought were serious candidates are turning out to be serious candidates. Now, it's only September, and, we're still about 16 months away from the inevitable inauguration of President Joe Biden. I know that annoys some people when I say that. A lot can happen. A lot can happen, and there's always surprises, which is part of what makes this so much fun and why I love it so much. But right now, the 2 people on the left and the right who no one initially took seriously are forcing everyone to take them seriously. I mentioned also, as far as on the left, Hillary Clinton. I talked about this briefly last night on the radio show, but I'll mention it again here. Even with the whole email scandal and some of the baggage of Benghazi, and the fact that a lot of people just don't like her, don't trust her. There was a poll recently that showed something like 80% of Americans don't trust Hillary Clinton. They think she's untrustworthy. They think she's a liar, etc. Even with all of that, up until very recently, there seemed to be this attitude that permeated the mainstream media that said that she was still inevitable. She is the inevitable Democratic nominee. Regardless of what's thrown at her, Bernie Sanders certainly isn't going to take her down. He's not to be taken seriously. And again, I think people are being forced to take him seriously. And, you've got these other candidates, Lincoln Chafee, Martin O'Malley, Jim Webb, and they're barely registering. You look at a poll, your typical poll of the Democratic contenders, and it's Hillary and Bernie. And then in third place, I saw a poll the other day at 8%, it had Joe Biden. And these other guys aren't even registering on the polls. Nobody cares. Biden hasn't even declared that he's getting in yet, and he's polling at 8% compared to everyone else. So, but there had been this attitude that regardless of what happens, Hillary is inevitable this time. And I was listening to, I didn't catch who said it, but I was listening to NPR and while I was driving, and somebody made a comment. It was on a political show. I think it might have been on the Diane Rehm show, and she will often have on a panel of people with whom she's discussing politics. And somebody made the comment that it seems like Hillary Clinton's campaign is imploding, and that this is actually beginning to look like 2008 all over again, where Hillary seemed inevitable. It seemed like it was going to be a coronation, and she was just going to have an easy ride to the nomination, and then something went very wrong. Of course, in 2008, it was a one-term senator with a funny name from Illinois showed up and stole the show from her. This time, it's hard to say exactly what is doing the most damage. I mean, I think, I know a lot of people would say that, well, it's the email scandal that's doing the most damage, and then someone like Bernie Sanders is just benefiting from that. Others might say Bernie Sanders actually is really resonating with some people, which I think he is, quite frankly. But what was striking to me about that moment was it was the first time this time around that I had actually heard someone in the mainstream media make a comment, and I certainly consider NPR part of the mainstream media, make a comment that this was beginning to look like 2008 all over again for Hillary Clinton, and that she may in fact be doomed as far as getting to the nomination. I mean, certainly alternative media, like, I would consider this alternative media. I mean, I've been saying that. I've been predicting that Biden was going to get in and potentially be the nominee for a while now, and that Hillary seemed to be imploding, and Jen and I talk about that all the time on the radio show. But it was the first time I'd heard someone in the mainstream media kind of really say that. Maybe people have been thinking it for a while, and of course, just because it was the first time I heard it doesn't mean that somebody somewhere in the mainstream hasn't been saying that for even longer than I have. I don't know, but it just struck me because it was the first time I had heard that spoken. And, I think it is starting to look like 2008 all over again. Now, I don't think Bernie Sanders is the guy. I think he's resonating with a lot of people. I think, one thing I've noticed is even people who disagree with him, I think have, in a lot of cases, some grudging respect for him because they feel that he's honest. He's not a slick politician who's trying to fool you into thinking that he's one thing when he's really another. I mean, he is a socialist. He uses that word himself. He's not trying to hide it from anybody. He says, this is what I believe, and what he believes probably makes him unelectable in a general election. I think if it's Sanders versus Trump, Trump wins. So I do think, imagine that. Think about that. Could it actually turn out to be Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump in the general election? Maybe frightening, it might be scary, but it's exciting and interesting all at the same time. Who knows? It really, I think it actually could happen. It actually could turn out that way. So we'll see. But like I said, it was the first time I'd heard anyone really kind of say that, certainly on NPR, that Hillary might actually be in trouble. And Biden is talking about, or seriously, I don't know if he's not talking about it publicly, but he's seriously apparently making some moves. And by the way, when you see a prospective candidate begin to line things up, how often do you see a prospective candidate begin to do some fundraising or lay the groundwork for such, or form an exploratory committee or whatever, and then not follow through and become an actual candidate, not announce a candidacy ultimately? It's pretty rare, right? Usually if someone is, sort of projecting or telegraphing, that was the word I was looking for, what they're going to do in terms of pursuing public office, they usually end up doing it. So this popped up on the Associated Press. Ken Thomas wrote this morning, 8:50 a.m. Vice President Joe Biden is headed to Florida, where he's sure to get a glimpse of his presidential prospects as he considers a late entry into the 2016 Democratic primaries. Biden plans to appear at Miami-Dade College and headline a private fundraiser for Senate Democrats on Wednesday as he mulls a potential challenge to Democratic frontrunner Hillary Rodham Clinton. Interest in a Biden bid has intensified in recent weeks as Clinton has struggled with what some Democrats consider a lackluster start to her campaign and scrutiny over her use of a private email account and server as President Barack Obama's Secretary of State. Tony Bisignano, an Iowa State senator who backed Biden's campaign in 2008, who wants him to run again, said this, quote, "There's a malaise inside the race right now with Clinton. People I know who are supporting her are not necessarily withdrawing, but are unenthusiastic. We're getting close to where it's going to be a tough race if he waits much longer," referring to Biden. He needs to hurry up and get in. And I have a theory about that, by the way, because it would be considered a late entry if he gets in now, if he doesn't hurry up and decide. I mean, the rumors have been September. Sometime this month, he will make a decision or make an announcement if he's getting in. But I think it will turn out to have been wise on his part to put it off. If he does see Hillary Clinton as an obstacle, as a political enemy, because Biden clearly wants to be president. He's always wanted to be president. We all know that. You can see it on him. He wants to be president. He's run, 3 times? And this last time, he ended up getting picked for VP. Of course, this last time in 2008 also, he had to drop out right after the Iowa caucus. He was doomed almost immediately. He didn't even make it to New Hampshire. But, why attack your enemy when your enemy is in the process of self-immolating? Hillary Clinton, if her campaign really is imploding, if it's in the process of self-destruction, it makes sense for him to just kind of sit back. Now he can't sit back too long, right? He's got to do it this month. And these potential fundraising opportunities aren't going to wait forever. But I think it's smart. He's sitting back, he's waiting, he's watching. Watch Hillary implode. And when the time is right, get in. I think that's, he's been around a long time. He knows the game. I think that's exactly the game he's playing, and I think he's playing it smart. A Democrat familiar with Biden's deliberations said recent discussions have focused on whether Biden's family would be ready to pursue a third presidential campaign only months after the death of the vice president's son, Beau Biden. Also under consideration is whether Biden can meet the basic criteria to be a serious contender, such as whether he would have a plausible path to victory in the campaign and whether he would be able to raise enough money to be competitive. I don't think that's a concern. I think he can raise the money. He's known for his fundraising ability. That was part of why Obama picked him. The Democrat spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to speak publicly about the private conversations. Biden's overnight trip to Florida, one of the nation's premier campaign battleground states, will include a Wednesday night fundraiser alongside Florida Senator Bill Nelson to benefit the Senate Democrats' campaign arm and meetings with Jewish leaders on Thursday morning who are skeptical of Obama's effort to win support for a nuclear deal with Iran. It's interesting, that all gives him cover. If he wants to say, no, I'm not running, I'm here to do this and this. He has other reasons to go there, to Florida. On Thursday night, Biden will pitch the Iran deal in an address to Jewish leaders in Atlanta. He then heads to Pittsburgh to march in a Labor Day parade on Monday with the AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka, who met privately with the Vice President last week. There's more to this, but if you want to read the whole thing, like I said, the AP has it up. Ken Thomas wrote this. Biden to test political waters in Florida as he mulls 2016. But I think he's going to get in. I absolutely do. I've thought that for weeks. And I know some say, well, yeah, we've been thinking that, but then he hasn't done it yet, so it's probably too late. It's not too late. The timing for him is perfect. Let Hillary burn, and then when she's sufficiently crisp, he can get in. That's a very crude and awful analogy, and I'm sorry. I wish not Hillary to burn. I don't like her or trust her. But so Bernie Sanders, meanwhile, this is what I was referring to earlier, and this is from the HuffPost. H.A. Goodman posted, polling trajectory shows Bernie Sanders winning the Democratic nomination. It's time for America to notice. This is kind of a long article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but when Sarah Silverman introduced Senator Bernie Sanders to an energized crowd of 27,500 people in Los Angeles, 27,500 people for a candidate show up at this event for a candidate no one took seriously when he got in. Politico ran a piece that same day titled, Clinton asks staff to turn over email server and thumb drive. On the day Bernie Sanders drew a crowd of 4,500 supporters in Reno, Hillary Clinton answered a question with the now legendary statement, what, like with a cloth or something? That was when somebody asked her about wiping her server. Several days after Bernie defeated Hillary in the informal Iowa State Fair poll, those don't mean anything, but the New York Times ran a headline with the words, Judge says Hillary Clinton didn't follow government email policies. There are countless other examples illustrating the different trajectories of both Democratic challengers, and nationwide polls are finally beginning to reflect this reality. Even 538 now says, we got burned, burned spelled B-E-R-N-E-D, and as in Bernie, and while concerns about name recognition and polling among minority voters still exist, only Bernie Sanders has a racial justice platform praised by Black Lives Matter, and only Vermont senator has the support of Cornel West, Killer Mike, and Little B. Senator Bernie Sanders will win the Democratic nomination in 2016 not only because he can type an email without nationwide controversy, but also because he's exhibited a monumental surge in the polls. This ascent within the hearts and minds of Democrats began several months ago and will only continue with greater name recognition. According to HuffPost pollster, Clinton's lead over Sanders among Democrats was an astounding 60.1% to a mere 4.9% on March 2nd. By August 26th, Bernie Sanders surged all the way to 23.4%, while Clinton fell to 47.1%. I mean, that's still, according to that data, she still got half what he has, twice what he has. But that's a big move for both of them, and the wrong direction for Hillary. America should finally start to notice a political revolution in the making, especially since most Americans still don't know much about Sanders, yet he still continues to rise in the polls. And you know what I think this is indicative of, by the way, is, I've been predicting for a long time that a lot of the divisions that you see in the different factions within the Republican Party that I think did them some harm in 2012, those same kinds of fissures exist on the left as well. And I think we're seeing that, Hillary Clinton is no liberal. So if you are a Democrat and a true liberal, trending toward or tending towards socialist, then you probably don't want Hillary Clinton. You want Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton is kind of a moderate on foreign policy. She seems like a neoconservative. I mean, there's also, and I've talked about this many times, I call it the Clinton paradox. Hillary Clinton loathed, absolutely despised by pretty much any Republican you could talk to, and yet, of the field of prospective Democrats who could be president, Hillary Clinton, underneath it all, ideologically speaking, is probably the most acceptable to the typical Republican voter because she is not ideologically a liberal. She is a moderate. And like I said, her foreign policy attitudes tend to be kind of neoconservative. I've always said I think she would have been very comfortable serving on the foreign policy team of the George W. Bush administration. So if you're a Republican, you certainly want Hillary over Sanders. I don't think there's any disputing that, but you probably want Hillary over just about anybody else too. Once he's given the attention he deserves from media and political pundits, Bernie Sanders will become even more popular among voters. In a matter of months, he surpassed Clinton in New Hampshire. Sanders is now within 7 points of Clinton in Iowa, and the Vermont Socialist beats Trump easily in a general election. That's interesting. While Sanders has drawn crowds totaling over 100,000 people, Hillary Clinton is forced to discuss the FBI's investigation of her emails. In terms of momentum, which is the most important aspect of ever-changing polls, Bernie Sanders is on his way to overtaking a Clinton campaign embroiled in controversy. Let's see. We're going to skip down a little bit here, just look at some numbers. Hillary Clinton favorable rating. Asked of 897 registered voters, 43% found Hillary Clinton favorable. Less than half. Unfavorable, 55%. Bernie Sanders favorable rating of the same 897 registered voters. 36 favorable, 29 unfavorable. So his favorable number is even lower than Hillary, but not heard enough, 25%, and undecided 8%. So that's all up for grabs. There's more to this. There's a lot of data here. Like I said, I don't want to get through... I don't want to go through all of that. If you want to look at this, it's on HuffPost. H.A. Goodman wrote it. Polling trajectory shows Bernie Sanders winning the nomination. And that went up. That actually went up yesterday. It's pretty remarkable. And then one other thing, and then we'll move on to something else entirely in a moment, but or maybe our guest will if he makes it. He'll come running in. But again, moving back to the right, the candidate that no one took seriously, Donald Trump, is now, he's really kind of in control of the playing field here because he has forced former Florida Governor Jeb Bush to engage him. Up until now, you know, the Republican candidates have tried not to engage Trump directly. And I think that they've been thinking that eventually he, like Hillary is doing, will sort of self-immolate. And that may yet happen. I don't know. But right now, I mean, he has an advantage over everybody, and he's playing it smart. And the advantage is this. He can get away with things that the other candidates can't. And instead of voters hating him for it, they love him for it. Now, not everyone loves him for it. For example, I took great issue with his comments about, undocumented immigrants being rapists and whatnot. I think that kind of talk is xenophobic and really just kind of appeals to the worst instincts in people. And there's some other things that he has said, too, that I don't like. And I don't know that I trust him with someone with his demeanor. I don't know that I trust him with our nation's foreign policy, to be quite frank, although I don't really trust any of these people with our nation's foreign policy at this point. But the advantage that Trump has is he can be outrageous, he can be outlandish, and among some people, they just love him that much more. And I think it has only strengthened him for a variety of reasons. For one thing, he's not a politician, and he's not trying to be. He's not pretending to be. He's a business guy. He's a TV star. He's sort of this larger-than-life character that he's cultivated. I do feel, by the way, that when I watch him, it's not Donald Trump, the real guy, running for president. It's Donald Trump, the television character that he's sort of developed. But it's working for him. It is absolutely working for him. And a lot of people are drawn to that, and they like that he's not polished. Who else could get away with, Megyn Kelly asks him at the debate, you've called women this, on Twitter you've said this, and Trump says only Rosie O'Donnell. And, and everyone roars with laughter. And no other candidate could get away with this stuff, but he can. And it's only helped him. And instead of people not taking him seriously, he's the front runner. not only is Bernie Sanders on the left preparing to take the mantle of frontrunner for the Democrats, Trump is clearly, and has been for a while now, the frontrunner on the right. And they are forced to engage him, including the person on the right who was supposed to have the same sort of easy glide to the nomination that Hillary had on the left, Jeb Bush, Governor Jeb Bush. And he is now, and I believe he's the first one to do it consistently. I'm not saying other Republicans haven't directly engaged Trump or responded to things that he has said. Absolutely they have. Scott Walker, I know, had words for him at one point. But Jeb seems to be really kind of taking this on, taking Trump on and taking it seriously. This popped up. This was from CNN. Ed O'Keefe writes, Jeb Bush went on the offensive Tuesday against GOP presidential frontrunner and frequent antagonist Donald Trump, releasing an attack video portraying the mogul as a closet liberal and signaling that he will attempt to bring Trump down in the coming weeks. Now, this is the first time we've seen this, at least that I'm aware of. Other candidates like Scott Walker, Rand Paul, I think Huckabee at one point maybe, I think Santorum, I think a number of them have responded to things that Trump has said because they can't escape it. You know, they're asked by people in the media, well, did you hear Trump said this about you? Did you hear Trump said this about this? What do you think? Ted Cruz, who actually at one point had really kind of cozied up to Trump. But this is the first time, I believe, that anyone in the campaign has engaged him as a threat to the point of actively campaigning against him. The others have been passively campaigning against him and the other candidates by not using direct attacks. Jeb is now using a direct attack. He is actively campaigning against Donald Trump. Trump is being it's almost like he's the potential Obama to Jeb's Hillary Clinton. This is supposed to be Jeb's show, and Trump is showing up to steal the show. Bush said in Spanish in response to questions from reporters at a Presbyterian school, this was, I'm not sure where this was, but this is what he said, quote, "He attacks me every day. He attacks me every day with barbarities. They're not true. What we did today was put out in his own words to show that he's not conservative," unquote. By the way, I certainly don't take issue with anything that Jeb is, sort of bringing to light here. I mean, I don't think Trump is a true conservative either. I think the character of Donald Trump is, because he's saying everything that conservatives want to hear. Almost everything. Although he did make kind of at one point a tepid defense of Planned Parenthood. But generally, he's saying everything conservatives want to hear. He didn't always talk that way. Up until relatively recently, he didn't always talk that way. But in fully embracing a fight against Trump, Bush is embarking on a risky strategy that could further fuel Trump's unexpected rise and complicate his own path to the nomination. Allies of the former Florida governor insisted he had no choice but to adopt a more aggressive posture, elevating his feud with Trump to the marquee contest in the GOP primary. Republicans said the dilemma for Bush is obvious. If he hangs back, voters may conclude he is weak. If he attacks, he engages a candidate who has proved to be an effective counterpuncher. For now, the conclusion in the Bush campaign is that appearing weak is the greater risk. Anna Navarro, a longtime GOP strategist backing Bush, I've seen her on MSNBC, she said, quote, "Knowing Jeb, I'm sure he'd prefer to be talking about policy proposals rather than trading verbal jabs with Trump. But what is he going to do? Let the guy mischaracterize his record and positions and attack him daily? Enough is enough. If Trump wants to pick a fight with Jeb, Jeb needs to embrace it and hit back," unquote. Well, I would tend to agree. Bush's release of the web video, amplified by his sharp attacks in English and Spanish after a town hall meeting here, marked a departure from weeks of reluctant, mostly tepid criticism of Trump, who has routinely assailed Bush for not having the energy to be president, among other taunts. That's true. I remember Trump saying Jeb is kind of a low-energy guy. Maybe because he comes across as sort of laid back and, he's not like Trump. Trump always, he's red-faced and he seems like he's ready to just explode. And Jeb is very much not like that. The escalation came after Trump released an aggressive video Monday that flashed mugshots of men charged with or convicted of murder as Bush's comments that undocumented immigrants enter the United States as an act of love played in the background. By the way, I hate that kind of stuff. And again, it's more of that Trump really kind of demonizing immigrants, and I find it really objectionable. The video Bush released Tuesday strings together clips from past interviews of Trump praising Democratic frontrunner Hillary Rodham Clinton. We've played that audio on my show. And voicing support for abortion rights, tax increases for wealthy Americans, and the 2009 economic stimulus program. And I believe our surprise guest is here. So we will finish up with this. But if you want to read the rest of the article, you can. It's on CNN.com. Come on in, sir. You can have a seat right there.
I'd be delighted.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
So we have with us, returning our friend of the show, the Honorable George Lambert. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Matt?
Good. Does John know you're here? Was he in the control room when you came in?
He was. I didn't talk to him.
Okay.
I didn't tell him.
All right. He was in there, or he wasn't?
There was someone at the computer.
Okay. So he hopefully he knows you're here. John, can you hear me? You might have that.
I can hear you.
Okay, do you know George is here?
Looking right at him.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Thank you.
Not bad.
What's that?
I said I'm not that bad.
I know. I'm just anal. Not that kind of anal. George, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
So it's been a while since we've seen you.
Yes, of course.
You look good. You look healthy. You look strong.
Yeah, feeling it.
Good.
Totally feeling it.
So I did not reveal, just in case you didn't make it, I didn't reveal to the audience who was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But I did say that the individual coming in was a controversial figure with a controversial new show.
Yes.
Coming to IPM Nation.
Yes, indeed. I've just gotten to had some conversations with some folks, and there's a new show coming out, which is called Talk Alt Love.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the premiere show will be about conversations on relationships, Ashley Madison, and what it means for our society.
Yeah.
To be, stuck in this whole place where the options are mono or not.
Right.
And the embarrassment that people are experiencing when you look at the numbers, the staggering figure of 34 million members in the Ashley Madison database.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare that with the total population of the United States of about 340 million roughly, we're going to go say 1 in 10 people.
Yeah.
When you start subtracting out the children and the people under 18, okay, the population drops a little. When you drop out all of the people who are single or divorced, you remove that from the population, you get what's left.
Right.
When you look at that number, then that number is staggering as a percentage. Now, that's a worldwide number. We're doing some math.
Yeah.
But the question that came out, somebody asked me, they're like, well, based on the raw percentages, how many people were there? And the number's astonishing.
Mm.
And so the question came out, well, why are they hiding? What are there options?
Mm-hmm.
And so some friends of mine were talking about it and said, let's go do a show about this, and let's start a conversation.
Well, there's a stigma, right?
Oh, totally.
Like when you take Ashley Madison, everyone assumes, okay, these are all people who are fundamentally doing something dishonest. That's the assumption.
Well,
and some of them are, no doubt.
I suspect a lot of them are.
Right.
Okay.
But we should not assume they all are.
No.
Because there is such a thing as, you hear the term a lot, polyamory.
Yep.
You seem to hear it a lot in libertarian circles, and
of course.
I don't know what the connection is there. I guess it's just the idea of freedom and...
It's the
what do you think it is?
I think it is this idea that, if you're a libertarian, you don't have to actually just stick to the standard check boxes.
Yeah.
There's this idea that you could actually, fill in half over here and half over there, etc.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who, when you become a libertarian, you're willing to question just about everything and not necessarily just assume that the definitions are strict. So people renegotiate definitions based on contract.
Okay.
And so you can actually, have a negotiated contract position where somebody says, you know what, I'm this or that. So. And you know, as you well know, I've certainly been controversial on that topic as well.
Absolutely. Well, what made you want to do a show? Because you, I mean, and I'm glad you're going to do it, but obviously there's different options. There's doing a show, there's writing a blog, there's giving speeches. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to, if you have something that you want to express or that you want to talk about, there's all kinds of ways to do it in the modern media.
Yeah.
Why do a radio show about it?
Actually, because there are a lot of people who, when you record a radio program, you can save it and have it available over iTunes. You can have it available as a podcast.
Yeah.
And what I guess it started about a week ago when someone said to me, "Look, there's a couple that was recently, you know, trying to figure out their terms, and they don't even know the vocabulary. So this guy decided he wanted to be polyamorous. He had a wife who wanted to be monogamous."
Oh, okay.
And, you know, that's actually a pretty reasonable combination because it encourages this idea of honesty.
Okay.
Honesty in relationships is fundamentally important. Okay? The difference between a relationship where people are cheating and a relationship where people are having a discussion reduces fear. But a lot of people don't even know how to begin to have those conversations.
Right.
And so we get off into this like multi-hour conversation about how most people don't even realize there are more than two boxes. It's not married or single. It's not in a relationship or not, etc. And people need to know vocabulary. Let's let's share some. There's a whole bunch of it out there.
Sure, but isn't there a fear? Like people might. I think for some people, they probably realize that, of course, there are other ways to approach this. There are other options. And maybe they even do have that relationship with a partner, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, where they can have that honest discussion. But then there's also the stigma of it. You know, and again, like within the libertarian community, you kind of have that advantage of, well, a lot of people are approaching it that way. Well, but if you, like, for example, you're doing a show like this, if you want to run for office again someday, this is something that people are going to judge you on. There's a stigma attached
I know,
to it.
isn't it great?
Yeah, well, it can be. I mean,
you know, I had a great deal of stress when I was looking at a run for governor.
Yeah.
Because someone threatened to out me. They're going, you know, you don't participate strictly in, you know, one of these checkboxed relationship types.
Right. Or the conservative Christian Republican ideal. Yeah.
And you know, let's talk reality. I have a better I challenged a bunch of people who asked questions about my relationship, and I said, you know, do you have a better relationship with your significant other than I do? And you know, come and have dinner with us and find out.
Right.
And what you know, because you've had dinner with us, is that I have an amazing, loving relationship with my wife, who doesn't like to go dancing. So I actually went, you know, have gone out dancing on a number of occasions, like to go to dinner.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You know, my relationships don't look like an Ashley Madison relationship.
Right.
Okay? Because I'm not looking to go and spend, you know, an evening with someone in a hotel room and leave.
Right.
I'm looking to actually just take somebody to dinner and the movies. And
right.
So, you know, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But I can have that conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a viable conversation. Okay? Because have you ever heard somebody use the phrase bromance before?
Oh, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, relationships are not strict boxes, and they're not, but you can have caring interpersonal relationships with people, but we lack vocabulary. How do you go and say to your partner, you know, I'm not completely comfortable with all of this, but it doesn't mean I don't want this.
Right.
And so giving people vocabulary to talk about that seems fundamentally important. And the suggestion that came up is, and the way I got dragged really into it is, how about an application on your mobile phone so that you can actually start gauging and scheduling and communicating? I had somebody come to me with an app idea 2 years ago, and I was like, I don't see the market. And she said, I want an app called the Doghouse app, so that I can actually tell my husband when he's in the doghouse and how to get out. Right? But clear communication.
Right, right.
And I'm so in favor of this. It's been sitting around in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And after that, you know, I'm like, yeah, it's really hard to communicate. And when people are hurting in a relationship and can't communicate, it gets bad and they get obsessed and they just don't even know how to cope.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a new tool.
Yeah.
And that tool needs to be a mechanism for better communication. And texting doesn't work. We all know that texting
Right.
is a disaster.
It can be. Yeah.
So what happens when you can actually communicate better? So we're actually discussing, a new iPhone app and a new Android app to go with it. The developers are already working on it.
Yeah.
So it's not just a show. It's
Cool.
a show with a tool for vocabulary so that people can, like, go look it up.
Yeah.
I had somebody send me an email the other day with a relationship/gender description of something that they found attractive.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So I had to ask, right? And
Yeah.
she goes, oh, that means that I find intelligent older men attractive. Did you know there's a definition for that? You're getting some gray hair up here. You should know that.
I am.
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah.
And so, like, imagine being able to have a place where you can go look it up.
Yeah.
And then, send somebody a reference to it.
What is the word for that?
I'm out of battery on my phone. If you want to give me your laptop, I'll go log in and look it up.
I can't get online with this here.
I'll find out for you.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was really bizarre that there's all this vocabulary.
Yeah.
And so, I actually knew that, there was this thing called LGBT for a long time.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, it's really interesting that they added Q, and then they added T. And then what I find out from my daughter, who's 13, is there's a whole alphabet soup. Like,
really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there are all of these terms.
See, I lost track. I don't even know what the Q and the T are on that.
Queer and transgender.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And then, like, there's a whole bunch of other ones, and I don't know what they are.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are people who do.
Yeah.
And it's a discussion worth having.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what I find interesting is the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage actually has reintroduced poly into the discussion for American society, for good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court justices said the idea of plural marriage is more tolerable to some because it's biblical than same-sex marriage.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, so there's already a discussion going to be happening in the community at large about this.
Mm-hmm.
There's already a couple that has actually filed for a plural marriage in another state.
Really?
Yeah. When I was in the legislature, we were having a discussion about a sexual orientation addition to the constitutional amendment, and the problems with that because of the wide range of descriptors.
Sure.
There are some things that I find very, very, very problematic and defined within the realm of the UN's definition of sexual orientation. Some of it is very disturbing.
Really?
Yeah. For example, I would never want to say they listed as one of the orientations on the list adult relationships with children.
Oh, no kidding.
And I'm like, hello? Like, no, like, you can't put that in our Constitution.
Right, of course.
Right? We
Yeah.
need tighter definition.
Yes.
And, consent is huge, and vocabulary to engage in, these protective classes is important. So I went and did my research, because you know me, I'm a homework guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I want to know, what argument I'm making.
Right.
And what I found out is that there are all of these categories. I had a conversation with a friend of mine before I went out to that hearing
Yeah.
in Concord. And I said to him, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to oppose a constitutional amendment that adds sexual orientation to our Constitution for the following reason. I explained it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm asking you because you've been openly gay since we were in junior high. And he says, yeah, it's totally true.
Yeah.
And his feedback to me was very interesting. He said most of the people when he was in junior high and high school who gave him a hard time and, beat him up or harassed him have all come out.
No kidding.
Yeah. He said, there's this group of people I knew who were constantly hassling me, and they're now all openly gay.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, you couldn't even have a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we go out and we have conversations about things like the bathroom bill and somebody who's transgendered And, which bathroom should they be required to use? If they are a woman who's dressed as a man, nobody has a problem if that woman walks into the men's room and uses their own private stall.
Mm-hmm.
But if it goes the other way, who's going to be offended? And is that really the business of government? And, my favorite is, they have family-friendly bathrooms in the malls.
Oh, yeah, you see them everywhere now, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I was in Germany, I walked into the wrong restroom because they don't use the same symbols that we do.
Oh, really? Yeah.
They use the circle with a line and a cross and an arrow.
Yeah.
I have no idea what these are. I walked in, and there were all these women. I got embarrassed, and I walked out. They didn't seem to have a really bad reaction to that.
Yeah.
But we stigmatize so much.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason we do, I took a relationships class back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And what I learned is that I come from a dysfunctional family. But statistically, so do you. Because 90% plus of all families do not match the leave it to beaver mentality
right.
that my parents grew up with.
Yeah.
Okay? But they didn't know any better.
Right.
And there's now a time where the number one thing that improves relationships is communication.
Mm-hmm.
And you've actually heard me say that outside of your show a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk to your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it's scary, talk to your partner more.
Right.
Because the more you talk, the better it is that you communicate. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean argue. I just mean say, you know what? I'm embarrassed to confess the following. And be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And get them to do the same. And you break this barrier of fear that comes from all of that.
Yeah.
My wife, for years, would always worry that I was going to wake up one morning and think she wasn't good enough and I was going to leave.
Really?
Yeah. In all the time you've known her, she hasn't felt that way. But we had to find out that thing in her mind that gave her that fear.
Yeah.
And what happens when you go and you have a conversation with somebody who's having a hard time in a relationship? They're on one side of that or the other. Mm-hmm. But everybody always worries about, am I going to say or do the wrong thing?
Right.
Am I going to just push the wrong button? And when you get rid of the fear of being able to be honest, relationships become magical.
Yeah, otherwise you're just walking on eggshells, and you might not even realize you're doing it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I actually know, I have friends who have gotten over very early in their relationships the ability to communicate. Mm-hmm. And, that's life-changing.
Yeah.
90 minutes will change your life.
Yeah.
And so there's a need. And there's a strong need. And it's all over the place.
Yeah.
I went out and mentioned that my friends now have this new, no holds barred coaching service where they will go out and they'll be your life coach on your own identity, figuring out what it is you think about, one of the things you fear, help you establish clear identity roles. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned it in conversation, and within 12 hours I had somebody just in conversation say, I want to sign up for that service.
Really?
Yeah, in a small circle of people.
Yeah.
I'm going, I'm helping these people, put this thing together. I'm like, really? I want to use that. They wanted to use it because, if you're not sure exactly where you are, how do you go? And, are you going to be embarrassed talking to your friends about it? You're going to be embarrassed talking to your partner about it? Okay. Do you really want to go and talk to your therapist about it if they don't understand?
Right.
But don't you want somebody who actually knows the vocabulary to help you figure it out?
Yeah.
And it was...
Exactly.
And so that's how we got to a show.
Yeah.
It's let's go out and bring some vocabulary out.
Yeah.
There was a great word that I heard used last night, which was... I can't remember it. I will know it by tomorrow night. But it's, basically this mononormative culture.
Yes.
Yeah, it's this idea that everything has to fit in that box.
Yeah.
Now, do you like sci-fi? I think you do.
Some.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Caprica? It was the pre-Battlestar Galactica.
No, I'm aware of it, but I've never seen it.
So one of the things in there was the conflict between monotheism and polytheism.
Yeah.
Okay? And so they really had this big split on mono versus polyculture because they were based loosely on this multi-god philosophy where the monotheists were a problem.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so discussions of marriage in this show were, polymarriage was completely a completely open discussion where one group, which we'll call polycule, had both men and women, a group, a community. It was about 8 of them who considered themselves a family.
Yeah.
Now, that in human history would have been considered a tribe or a village.
Right.
If you go back a couple of hundred years, you go back a couple of thousand years, and those people probably traveled together to hunt and gather.
Right.
And, yes, you had primary and secondary relationships, but I'll tell you, if somebody comes in to attack anyone in your village, you're going to treat them like they're attacking your family.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But we don't have that kind of culture or vocabulary anymore.
Right.
And what I've learned is you can only relate to other people within the limits of your vocabulary. Now, somebody told me back when I was young that Eskimos have a large number of words for snow. Why? Because there's a lot of it, and, there's more than one kind.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you spend 6 months of your year having to deal with snow,
Right.
The fact that it's snowing outside isn't really interesting.
Right. That makes sense.
But we don't have
Right.
40 different types of vocabulary for snow.
Right.
We have snowing, sleeting, hail. That's about it.
Yeah,
That's all I can
yeah.
remember.
Right, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Weather guys, they probably know more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So what happens if we introduce better vocabulary? What
Yeah.
happens if we encourage people to actually talk and to talk without fear? I had a lot of fear the first time I had somebody say to me, I'm going to go out and tell other people that you're not normal. Guess what? I've completely come to the rationalization that I'm not normal. Okay, but we'll leave normal for the washing machine.
Yeah.
That's a setting, baby. All right? I'm not normal. I'm an individual.
Right. Right.
And I'm an individual just like you.
Yeah.
And we can be individuals differently. And I can be comfortable saying that I don't even know what I am yet because I don't know enough vocabulary. But I know what I'm not. And I'm not normal.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be fun to have a place where people can go and learn that?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mononormative culture.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping people are going to join us and get engaged. We're going to be on 10 o'clock tomorrow night is the first show. It'll probably be chaos. But I have learned so much. I mean, the one of these ladies who actually does this life and relationship coaching said to me, "You will learn so much about yourself in the first hour."
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had to break down this fear of being willing to admit to myself that I don't know. Though that's the biggest challenge.
Right.
Is realizing that I'm not sure, I don't know, and I can't even mentally confront the fact that I want to be something other than normal.
Right.
And then you realize nobody's normal.
Right.
How incredible.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. Yes. We're all snowflakes. We're all unique.
Absolutely.
You can think of it that way. We're out of time, but George, I really look forward to the new show. So it's going to premiere tomorrow night at 10 on IPM Nation, and it's called what?
It is called Let's Talk Alt. Or
That doesn't sound right.
no.
Love
Talk Alt Love.
Talk Alt Love. Yes. Very good.
There were so many names yesterday, but they've
no, you've picked a good one.
They're down to 3 logos now.
Oh,
so
really? Okay.
By midnight tonight, we ought to actually have a final decision on the logo because they
Excellent.
said it's got to have lips and it's got to have hearts.
Okay.
So we're now down to the 3 choices. So there'll be lips, there'll be hearts, it'll be red, and it'll be wonderful to listen to.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to that. So, George, the Honorable George Lambert, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And we will say goodbye for now. If you're watching live on Wednesday, of course, I'll be back at 6 p.m. with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. And other than that, I will talk at y'all later. Thanks.